The fallout from Friday's Supreme Court decision is still being sorted out across the country. Going across the border is now the new reality for a lot of women. For Idaho women looking for reproductive care, which includes abortion, that might mean going across the border to Oregon. Idaho's triggered abortion ban would outlaw all abortions in the state. Now, there are exceptions in cases of rape or incest that have been reported to police. By the way, only about a third of sexual assaults are reported to police. There's also an exemption for medical or emergency medical care to save the life of the mother. Advocacy groups in Idaho, like Planned Parenthood, are taking steps right now to create resources so women can travel to other states if they do need an abortion. Joe Paris joins us now. And Joe, you also learned that a state not named Idaho, which would be Oregon, creates these creating resources and kind of investing in solutions to help Idaho women seek out the care they need.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation here where you have the state of Oregon really working to help Idahoans, something that you may not see. It's good neighborly work, I suppose. But that place, as we talked about, yeah, our neighbors to the west, Oregon. And back in March, the Oregon legislature, they passed a bill that created a $15 million fund called the Oregon Reproductive Health Equity Fund. And that fund is meant to create a variety of resources, and I'm quoting here, to close existing gaps in reproductive health care access and in preparation for an increase of people seeking abortion care. And that includes people here in Idaho who will now likely have to travel to Oregon to get abortion care. And lawmakers like Oregon Representative Andrea Valderrama pushed for Oregon to dedicate millions of dollars for the fund. So yes, Oregon tax dollars will go towards helping Idaho women who seek abortion care. So the question here, why? We spoke with the representative earlier from Oregon.
The intention behind this fund was to close the existing gaps that we currently have in our reproductive health care network. And so whether that means that those are for Eastern Oregonians who currently don't have any infrastructure, whether that's for a resident in a neighboring state, we believe that everyone deserves this access and care and the opportunity to plan their family and to have access to abortion. And so we took all of that in mind to put forward something that was meeting the needs of this community and really of this country in this moment.
Another factor in this, as you heard the representative allude to, are people living in Eastern Oregon. You may not know this. The closest resource for abortion care for those living in Eastern Oregon was Boise. Planned Parenthood is working to open a clinic in Ontario, but until that is set up, women in Eastern Oregon could have to drive hundreds of miles to the west to get care. The closest looks like Bend, Oregon. Now, the fund factors all of that in. So how does this program work? Well, the Oregon legislature set up that $15 million fund, which is also encouraging people to donate to it. And that fund is now in the care of the 501c3 Seeding Justice. And the legislature appointed that group to distribute the $15 million to address immediate and urgent patient needs for abortion funds and practical support, things like travel and lodging, and also to expand their provider network capacity. So $15 million was set aside in total. $1 million of that $15 million was actually pledged this past week to Northwest Abortion Access Fund. Now, Representative Valderrama has this advice for Idahoans looking to connect with the resource.
For someone to reach out to an organization that is most accessible to them. And so if they have relationships or if they're able to get a hold of someone at the Northwest Abortion Access Fund earlier, then that's great. If they're able to find someone at Planned Parenthood or through the Seeding Justice Fund, then that's great. That's great as well. I think we want folks to be able to ultimately get those resources in the fastest way possible.
So the theme right here is the regional care and the regional support state to state. So also of note in our region, the western states, California, Oregon, and Washington, has agreed to what they are calling a multi-state commitment to reproductive freedom. And points of that commitment include the following. I want to show you some points. Now, they want to protect against judicial and local law enforcement cooperation with out-of-state investigation, inquiries, and arrests regarding the provision of receipt, really, of assisting or obtaining an abortion and other reproductive health care services that are legal in those states. The states also, Oregon, Washington, and California, have this commitment to refuse non-fugitive extradition of individuals for criminal prosecution for receiving legal reproductive health care services in those states, Washington, Oregon, and California. And to be clear here, Brian, those points I just talked about, basically that those Western states aren't going to cooperate with other states that are looking to criminalize abortion, it's really not written specifically about anything that Idaho has done. So those points I just mentioned, they're not directed specifically at Idaho, but when you talk about, criminalizing someone who would go over state lines and do something legally in one state, which is illegal in another state, you kind of understand where this direction of the conversation is going. Is that going to be the case in Idaho? Or Idaho lawmakers going to do something like that? We'll have to wait and see. But we have seen lawmakers across the country suggest or start to work on legislation that says if you do not follow our laws and you go over state lines, we're looking for options on how to hold you responsible for that. So it'll be interesting to see where this conversation goes. There's also constitutional questions, Brian, about if that would even be legal under the United States Constitution.
Okay, so I can understand if you go into Ontario and you buy some marijuana, you bring it back to Idaho, that could be a problem. You go over to Ontario and you smoke some marijuana and you come back, they can't prosecute you for that.
No. And it's an interesting test case. There are situations where you can get certain abortion medications through the mail, and there's questions about if you're in Oregon and you were to send it to a patient that got it over the border, what type of interference would that be? Would that be legal? So there's a lot of different directions this needs to go. As we've learned over the last few days, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yep, and as we learned from Representative Megan Blanksma on Friday, there's still a lot we have to figure out. All right, thanks, Joe.